Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV.
Please join me in welcoming Christian Kaylor.
I give a few presentations in the community, but I think there's a good number of people here who haven't heard me speak before, which will be fun. So, more for me than for you. But so if we look at the United States as a whole, and I'm just going to sort of talk about the economy. I want to start with the U.S. before we zoom in on the Portland area. Something very interesting, and I look at a lot of this data professionally, where I look at how Portland is doing compared to other parts of the state, Pacific Northwest, the United States as a whole. And I found this playing around with the data a couple of weeks ago, where I noticed that if you look at job growth among the 50 states and you rank them, and you look at the top 10 states for growth over the last 4 years, so 2013, 14, 15, and 16, there's an interesting pattern that pops up. And this fits what we see looking around the United States a lot in terms of job creation, income growth, GDP growth by state and region, general prosperity. And so the top 10 states, number one is Florida here at 14% job growth. But really, there's only 3 regions in the United States that are really doing very well at creating jobs and growing its populations. And these are sort of the regions. And you'll notice, so you've got the South, but just sort of parts of the South, not necessarily the deep South. So we've got Florida as the fastest job creator, 14% job growth in 4 years. Georgia and South Carolina next door. The entire West Coast, which Oregon obviously is part of, Oregon, Washington, California there. Oregon number 6 on this list, by the way, 6th fastest state for job creation in the last 4 years. And then this sort of Intermountain West. And again, not all the Intermountain West, but Idaho, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. And so these other states, many of them have not created any jobs in the last 4 years. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But Portland has done very well, and Oregon has been doing very well the last few years, but let's put that in some sort of a context. We are part of a trend that appears to be happening nationally, especially over the last 4 years. And I don't know, I think there are a few common threads here if you sort of squint at it, but one of the issues I think that is often overlooked in econometric discussions about economic growth around the United States is the value of good weather and good climate. Now, I say that having just biked through the rain in mid-June coming here, so I realize how strange that might sound. But again, relatively moderate climate, close to an ocean, close to rivers and mountains, some natural amenities, but also states that have access to a major metropolitan area with an international airport and university. So there's some combination of factors that's occurring there, but much of the rest of the United States isn't getting it. And I just want to say, I really hurt Texas on this one. Texas is number 11. I arbitrarily colored in the top 10. Texas is easily number 11 on this list, so Texas is doing very well. And you'll see that when you look at the same map by metro region. So here what I've done is I've taken the 50 largest metros in the United States, and I took the top 10 over the last 10 years. This is an important difference. I shaded them in red. You'll notice Texas has 4 of the top 10 fastest growing metros in the United States for the last 10 years. Very interesting. The second tier, the next 10, so of the 50 fastest growing metros in the U.S., of the 50 largest, Portland's included in that list. I think we're about the 16th fastest or something in the United States. I shaded them in orange. And again, that same rough pattern still exists. Now keep in mind, I've done something important from the previous slide to this slide. The previous slide, I was only looking at the last 4 years, which have been excellent for economic growth in the United States as a whole. Here, I'm going back in my time machine to 2007. I'm going back past the recession. I'm going back past all of, I'm going back when housing was taking off in 2006, 2007. And so these are the regions that to me are the survivors. Because yeah, they've done really well in the last 4 or 5 years, almost all of them in the economic recovery, but they also did relatively well in the downturn. They took their hits in the downturn, all of them to varying degrees, particularly Las Vegas, which did not make this list, just got hit so hard in the economic downturn, 08, 09, 2010, but hasn't yet fully recovered. So Las Vegas isn't on this list, even though they've been doing very well the last couple of years. But these are the regions that, to me, are long-term holds. Where, again, this is a community, if it's shaded in on this map that I made, me on my Microsoft Paint there on my lunch hour, what I've done is these are the regions that, and again, you see that trend, the South and the West Coast and the Intermountain West, with a couple of interesting outliers, and I'll have to figure out what the heck Louisville, Indianapolis, and Columbus have going on. I don't know why those are on the list, but you see Raleigh, Charlotte, and Nashville, and Atlanta absolutely on that list, where even through a downturn, these are regions that over the longer haul are growing. We'll talk about why that might be, specific to the Portland area. Now, this is the Portland area, and this is wages. So Oregon has been very good at creating jobs, as we've just discussed, and this morning we announced that the Oregon unemployment rate at 10 a.m. I work for the Oregon Employment Department, and one of the many statistical services we provide is we calculate the unemployment rate, and we release that. So we released the May unemployment rate this morning at 10 a.m., and it's a record low. It's 3.7%. That is the lowest rate since 1976. So for many people in this room, it is the lowest unemployment rate in Oregon in your lifetime. It's just a very interesting time to study the economy. And one of the things that comes up with that is, when I discuss that with people, I say, wow, we're doing really great at creating jobs. They go, yeah, we're great at creating jobs, but where are the wages? Are these good paying jobs? And in fact, here in gray, I've outlined the U.S. wage growth over the last 4 years. This is April to next April for each year. And in black, I've outlined the wage growth in the Portland metro region, which has outperformed the U.S. consistently over the last 4 years. You notice something with the U.S. numbers. We were growing wages only, and this is not adjusted for inflation. So, if your wages are growing by 2.3%, like they were nationally in 2014, 2015, you're probably only just keeping up with inflationary pressures of about 2%. The last couple of years have been slightly better, but we've also seen inflation, top line, headline CPI numbers come up into the area of 2.5% lately. Those workers just can't get a break. So even as wages have gone up to the 2.5% region the last 24 months, inflation is still eating most of that away, if not all of it. But the Portland area really outperforming the United States, not only in creating jobs, but seeing stronger wage growth. We'll talk about what might be driving that here in a few slides. So this is the flip side. I don't want to spend too much time with this, but I think it's worth noticing. I opened with the first slide as the top 10 U.S. states for job growth. Well, here are the bottom 10 for people who are interested in these sorts of things. And they have, almost all of them have one really important thing in common, energy, whether it's oil or gas, natural gas, coal. And so these are states that Oklahoma and West Virginia are two extreme examples where they're beginning to even see population declines as a whole. To most economists, when you see a nation or a region that's actually losing total population, that's usually an indicator of a severe economic strain. And I would argue that many of these states, even in the last 4 years, in the midst of a healthy U.S. economic recovery, are essentially in recession. So there's really two different stories going on here. Alaska is one of them, North Dakota, Wyoming. And again, Oklahoma and West Virginia particularly starting to even see population losses. Their tax bases are shrinking rapidly. It's very painful for those guys. They're in very different conversations. I don't know what's up with, what is that, Connecticut? I forget, and New Mexico, but and Louisiana, obviously very oil-based. So where are these jobs being created? So there, as everybody knows, there's 36 counties in Oregon, right? We all knew that. Of the 36 counties, my favorite, the one we're standing in, Multnomah County, is very interesting. It is the smallest county, and it's the largest county. So there's about 800,000 people living in Multnomah County. That's about 20% of the Oregon's population. But the size of the county is actually the smallest, so only 0.5% of the surface area of Oregon is in Multnomah County, which is pretty incredible when you realize that more than 1/4 of all jobs in the state of Oregon are in Multnomah County. So we have this incredibly dense urban area that includes the city of Portland, Gresham, Troutdale, a few other smaller communities, but roughly 90% of the jobs in Multnomah County are in the city of Portland. And we can see in Multnomah County in the last 7 years, coming out of the bottom of the recession, 82,000 new jobs created in Multnomah County. That's a lot. I don't think that in the lifetime of anybody in this room I could find 82,000 jobs being created in Multnomah County in 4 years. The exception being the 1940s with the Liberty shipbuildings at the Kaiser shipyards, when we probably had over 80,000 people working just in manufacturing and building ships. But with the exception of that, this is a really incredible run the last few years from Multnomah County. Also in the lifetime of everyone in this room, very rare to see Multnomah County create more jobs than the second and third largest county in the state of Oregon, Washington County and Clackamas County combined, although they're still doing quite well. Almost 80,000 jobs combined there as well. Then this is where most of the rest of the state of Oregon lives. About 85% of the population of Oregon either lives in the Tri-County area here in Oregon, Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas, and the rest lives in Benton County, that's the Corvallis area, Lynn County, that's the Albany area, Jackson County, that's the Medford area, Lane County, that's Eugene Springfield, Deschutes County, that's the Bend area, Marion and Polk, that's the Salem area. That's really all of urban Oregon is on this map, and you'll notice that 2 out of 3 net jobs created are just in the Tri-County area. So if you're out in Cruz Way, the vast majority of jobs created, or Bridgeport Village, let's say, which is sort of where Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County kind of meet there, where 217 dumps in I-5, the vast majority of jobs created in Oregon in the last few years were created just within a few miles of where you're standing if you're staying in Bridgeport Village. Really interesting and unusual in Oregon to see a lopsided economic recovery where the Portland area, and the city of Portland in particular, is sort of driving that economic job creation. This job creation is so noticeable that it's noticeable when you look across the United States. So what I've done here is I've taken the 50 largest cities in America and I've ranked them by job creation, although I was very careful in picking these dates, I admit. 2013, April 2013 to April 2015. These are where the jobs are physically located. I want to be clear on this one. We know from studying commuter patterns that only about half of the people who work in the city of Portland live in the city of Portland, and roughly vice versa. So when I talk about job creation in the city of Portland, at least half these folks, reasonably speaking, live in Southwest Washington or Clackamas County or Washington County or wherever, and they're commuting in. The city of Portland, noticeable for just creating a tremendous amount of jobs, 42,000 jobs in that 2-year period. That's more than the city of Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, and Milwaukee combined over the same time period. So really excellent job growth, and kind of hard for me to see. I think, is it Miami is number 1 there? San Francisco, I think, is number 3. But if you sort of look at this list of cities, you'll notice that same sort of pattern of sort of the West Coast, the South. You'll see Atlanta on there. You'll see Miami on there. You'll see a lot of Texas on there. Austin in particular pops up on all these lists. Rapid population growth along with rapid job growth. You can't separate those two things. To create a job, you need a person. And you'd be surprised how often that's overlooked. When it comes to economic development strategy meetings that I go to around policy, and they go, we want to create jobs. And I go, well, there's a couple ingredients to that, and one of them is a person. And I'm having that conversation with policymakers a lot these days as they go, hey, we want to create some jobs. And I go, well, the unemployment rate's about 3.5%. So where are you going to find the physical person to put in that job is your first problem, actually. And the places that can do that are the places that can grow. And the places that can grow are the places that have houses for the workers to live in. And that's sort of my theme. I gave it away, but I have a few more slides, so I hope you'll bear with me. And again, going back to the income issue, it's Portland, and we've got this show about us, Portlandia, and everybody knows that Portland has this sort of reputation. Yeah, of course, lots of people want to move here. Lots of jobs maybe are being created. But, they're all probably bicycle marijuana deliverers, and I don't know. They're probably riding their bicycle to deliver marijuana, or for all we know, they're riding their marijuana to deliver bicycles. It's Portland. Who knows? They're doing yoga with goats or something, or they're professional huggers or something. These are all, yeah, there's a lot of jobs, but they're all, they're very low pay, low skill, weirdo jobs, and, for 20-somethings. And so this is a fun one. The city of Portland actually drew my attention to this one, the budget committee up there. If we look over the last 5 years by city, this isn't the metro area. Again, I'm zooming on in the city of Portland, which is about 1/4 of the population of the larger metro region. If we look at who lives here, and again, this is sort of the flip side of the previous one with job creation. Job creation, those jobs, they're physically in the city of Portland, but half of them are filled by people who live outside the city of Portland. Here what I'm looking at is households that are physically within the city of Portland, and we've done something really remarkable. And that is we've increased the average wage or income of households in the city of Portland, 3rd fastest in America among the 50 largest cities in the United States, up there with Seattle and San Francisco. Another way to put this, in 2010, if you'd asked me to rank the 50 largest cities in the United States, city of Portland's about halfway down that list, it's about the 25th largest city, and say, okay, wealthiest city down to the lowest, poorest city, and San Francisco or Seattle would probably be number 1, number 2 on that sort of list. Portland would have been 17th for wealthiest city in America in 2010. In 2015, we're number 8. We're moving up that list incredibly quickly, just in a 5-year period of time. We're now, that's a 19% increase in household income adjusted for inflation. The United States as a whole during that same period of time grew by 2.5%. So we're growing about 7 times faster for income. Lots of growth, particularly among high net worth, high income folks. And part of that we see when we look at the is a radical change in the population demographics of the city of Portland and the Portland region in general. We're seeing lots and lots of folks move here who have a number of sort of demographic things that you notice about them. One of them is disproportionately white, but another one is disproportionately younger, 20s and 30-somethings, and disproportionately likely to have a college degree. So the vast majority of people moving to the city of Portland the last few years, 20 and 30-somethings with college degrees. In fact, we're, I think, the 8th fastest city. Again, I took the 50 largest cities in America to sort of show where we would rank there. And the city of Portland added 41,000 people in the last 5 years with a bachelor's degree or more that are working age. That's a 27% increase in 5 years. That's amazing. The city of Portland as a whole over that same time period grew by 8%. Folks with college degree, 27%. I'm going to come back to that slide at the end of this that statistic in a slide at the end of the presentation. 27% growth. The U.S. as a whole grew at 10%. So we're growing almost 3 times faster in a key demographic. And again, just to give you some sort of sense of comparison, that net growth is more than Indianapolis, Milwaukee, and Minneapolis combined for growth among college graduates who are working age. Part of what's happening is we have lots and lots of baby boomers that are leaving the workforce in that same 5-year period. And so communities have to work harder to attract lots of people to replace those highly educated, highly skilled, highly paid baby boomers as they exit the workforce. Portland is very good at doing that. Get this remote figured out. I think this is my next slide. So this is maybe the bummer about the current situation, and I think one of the reasons a lot of you folks are here is let's look at employment growth in the Portland area. So I took a very long look here. This is the last 27 years, I want to say. We changed the way we do the math on this stuff around 1990, 1991. So I want to give a very long view of what job creation looks like in the Portland region. I'm back to the region now. Over the last 27 years, the mid-1990s, absolutely incredible job growth in the Portland region. And if people were here in the 1990s, if you lived here in the 1990s, you remember when the city of Hillsborough doubled in population from 1990 to 2000. Incredible job creation in the 1990s. We were looking at 4.5. There's a couple years in there. There's 4 excellent years in the mid-90s. We were growing 4.5, almost 5% job creation annually. Really incredible job growth in the mid-1990s. A lot of slowing in the late 1990s as the tech bubble started to falter on us. Big recession, 2001, 2002. A moderately strong recovery, 05, 06, 07. Again, a lot of folks who might have been here. I think we only peaked out at about 3.5%, trying to read my own slide, in 2006 for job creation. But only 4 or 5 good years there. And then a tremendous loss of jobs. We lost about 8% of all jobs in about a 1.5, 2-year window there, 2009, 2010. I've been doing this job for 17 years, and it was very disheartening. January of 2009 through about April of 2009, I had this job. And so January, we announced the unemployment rate. We said, well, the unemployment rate's 7%. In February, we said the unemployment rate's 8%. I mean, to go up a full point in 1 month is really crazy. And in March, we came out, and we said, well, now the unemployment rate's 9%. And then in April, we came out and said the unemployment rate's 10%. And I mean, if every month, that was my life, was talking to reporters and talking to businesses, and they go, oh, the unemployment rate is going up 1 point every month. And, at this rate, where are we going to be in a year or two? So very disheartening time, but just imagine, you lose 1 in 12 jobs in the region. That's an incredibly tough recession, and I really think then and now we've forgotten how incredibly painful that recession is. And the fact that we were able to come out of it so strongly, and I think that's a commentary on the fundamental strength of the Portland economy to come out of a very bad recession. So now we see these excellent growth numbers, and again, you'll notice really kicking into a very high gear, 2014, 2015, 2016, but we seem to have turned a corner and shifted into a much lower gear right around, I would say, fall, maybe September of 2016, still growing. In 2014, 2015, we were adding, as a Portland region, about 35,000 jobs a year. We're now growing at an amortized rate of about 20,000 jobs a year, 1.7% job growth that we see right now. 1/4 of that job growth is just in the construction industry alone. We're seeing growth across the industry spectrum, except for manufacturing, particularly high tech the last 12 months, both with Intel about a year ago and the recent news from SolarWorld, really struggling, but just sort of holding flat. So I often get asked, okay, where are those jobs being created? What's going on? And part of what's happening is we have a handful of industries, and the one that gets picked on the most, I put on the list, software publishers, 42% job creation in a 6-year period. So we've had 42% job creation just in the software publishing industry in the Portland region, where the average wage is $107,000 a year. Median income for a computer program in the Portland area, $105,000 a year. Probably our fastest growing industry. But you'll notice a range of other industries here. Engineers, architects, doctors, lawyers, all of these professional services growing very quickly. And we see here, looking at by occupation, we've had 15% employment growth over the last roughly 5 years, but you see almost twice as much growth people working in computer jobs, working in healthcare jobs, so significantly faster growth in architecture and engineering occupations, science occupations. And I spoke to a legal association last month. I had to give them the bad news. They're actually underperforming. We are creating more jobs for lawyers, but at a much slower rate than we are for these other high-wage professional folks who typically make a 6-figure income. And we're underperforming in those sort of middle-class occupations, construction, which I think only in the last couple of years has really started to take off, and manufacturing jobs, only 14% growth coming out of the recession. And even more depressingly, perhaps on the bottom, one of our lowest wage occupations, food preparation and serving, fast food sort of stuff, 29% growth. Maybe one of our fastest growing occupational categories. Someone has to make delicious food for all these high-income folks who are working very, very hard, billing lots of hours. So I mentioned I was going to come back to that 27% figure, and you're going to see it in the top right of this slide. I made this slide when I speak to statewide conferences about the state of the Oregon economy, and I want to show some of the contrast looking around Oregon. And so again, I mentioned there's 36 counties. Many of them are very, very small. There's a number of counties out there with only 5,000 people in them in rural Oregon. 90% of Oregonians live in one of these 10 counties, and what you'll notice is there's really only 4 counties that are adding folks who are working age, who have a college degree. So Multnomah County, that 27%, as I mentioned earlier, the city of Portland, 41,000 new folks with college degrees. Washington County, 20,000. Clackamas County, 13,000. Again, disproportionate growth, 16% in Washington County, 21% in Clackamas County. They're doing a really great job of attracting skilled workers to those communities. But with the exception of Bend, every other corner of the state of Oregon is failing to attract these folks. And in fact, in some cases, actively brain draining. As an example, Douglas County has lost in 5 years 1 in 4 workers with a college degree in 5 years. That's a tremendous problem for that community. Lynn County, that's the Albany area, but even Eugene, and this is not an urban-rural issue, there's Eugene and Salem with no growth in that demographic. If you look around the state of Oregon, there's really only 4 communities in the state of Oregon that are adding high-skilled, working-age folks, and that's Multnomah County, city of Portland, Washington County, Clackamas County, and Deschutes County, and everybody else is practically a rounding error to 0. This is a very unusual situation. And so we have this situation where you have lots of people moving from all over the United States to the Portland area, the Tri-County area, because we're creating these high-wage jobs. And businesses wanting to come to the Portland area because they know there's an availability of skilled, educated, professional workforce. But the rest of the state of Oregon, really struggling with that. And this is our biggest strength as a region, is our continued attractiveness to professionals who want to come live here and the businesses that want to give them those jobs. You've put up with me for long enough. Thank you very much.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.